Hello again. Now, members of Parliament have just about 3 months left to make legislative changes to the Electoral Act that will enable independent candidates to be elected to provincial legislatures as well as the National Assembly. Now, while the Home Affairs Portfolio Committee has begun its hearings, there's an expressing concern about the time pressure. Meanwhile, the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution, that's Casac, is also concerned that this process is seemingly being hurried. Well, let's hear them out. Lawson, Naidoo from Casac joining us now this hour. Good afternoon, sir. Thank you very much for your time. What are your main concerns about how Parliament is managing this process to involve and include the public in discussing the possible amendments to the Electoral Act?
Good afternoon, Dan. Thank you very much. I think we must start with the judgment of the Constitutional Court that was delivered in June of 2020 in the New Nation Movement case, where the court ruled that the electoral laws needed to be amended to accommodate independent candidates contesting national and provincial elections. And it gave Parliament 2 years in which to amend those pieces of legislation. Unfortunately, it took government 18 months to table a bill before Parliament. And that 18 months was really wasted time. And now we're in the situation with, as you say, with just 3 months to go before that due deadline. The process of processing this amendment bill through Parliament is being rushed. There's inadequate public consultation. We had public hearings a couple of weeks ago in Parliament, and there have now been public hearings around the country. But there's been very little notice given of those public hearings, very little information that has been shared broadly to enable people to comment meaningfully on the draft legislation. And perhaps most importantly of all that is on the table is the legislation that is being proposed by the executive, which seeks a minor tweaking of the existing electoral system to accommodate independent candidates within a proportional representation system. This runs contrary to the views of a ministerial advisory committee that was established by Minister Motsoaledi in the first half of last year, which was chaired by Vali Musa, and which the majority of whose members recommended a different kind of electoral model, one that incorporates 200 single-member constituencies as well as a PR system. And that option is not being put to the public. And therefore, the public consultation process that we are seeing at the moment is really a tick box exercise rather than really engaging on the kind of electoral system that is suitable for South Africa in this time.
Okay, so broadly from what I'm hearing you're very concerned about the lateness of the process and the way it's going currently, therefore communication around it and the involvement and engagement of various stakeholders. But also you're concerned that it's missing. This particular discussion is missing some key components.
It is indeed, because the only option that's really on the table in terms of these public consultations is the draft bill that has come from the executive. There are differing opinions within the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee itself, and certainly from the many organizations that made submissions to the committee. I think of all of the organizations that made submissions, only one organization has supported the bill in its current form. So it seems that there is a real contestation to the contents of this bill, and there needs to be a far more insightful and meaningful process of public engagement to really ascertain what South Africans think about an electoral model that's suitable for us. And we do this with the knowledge that the support for the electoral process in South Africa has been diminishing in recent times. We've seen significantly decreasing voter turnout at elections. In the local government elections last year, less than 50% of eligible voters opted to go and cast their ballot. And we therefore need to engage properly with South Africans so that they can have confidence in this critical electoral mechanism that is there to express the will of the people.
What would you, as Casac, like to see now the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee do in this process, or this parliamentary? How would you like to see things going forward? I mean, the deadline is there, for example, for one. But between now and then, what would you like to see different?
Well, I think there is a deadline there, but Parliament has already approached the Constitutional Court to try and seek an extension of that deadline. And I think it's important to bear in mind that, when you change an electoral system anywhere in the world, it's a once in a lifetime or once in many lifetimes opportunity to do so. We've been using the same electoral system in South Africa since 1994. It has served us well for a time. But I think, as we've seen, that there's a huge accountability deficit in South Africa, and we need to put in place an electoral system that creates a closer nexus or link between the voters and their elected representatives, where accountability can be properly extracted. And therefore, the option of a mixed system with a constituency component to it is probably an important one, and is certainly deserving of greater public comment on that. And so whilst the deadline is there, I think given that this is a rare opportunity to review the electoral system, we should take it and not be bound strictly by the deadline. That should the Constitutional Court grant an extension, it should be embraced, so that we actually have come up with an electoral system that is responsive to the needs of South Africans, and not just to the needs of political parties. And, we have this invidious position where it is political parties who are primarily will be affected by any change in the electoral system, are the ones making the decisions as to that electoral system.
If
and
nothing
in the
happens...
process of public consultations...
Yeah, sorry. You can finish your thought there, Lawson.
Sorry, I was saying in this process of public consultations, they're not taking into account the views of the public adequately. And there's a sense that, this is a fast-track process simply to tick boxes and get this executive-minded piece of legislation onto the statute book, and to try and meet the June deadline of this year.
If nothing happens, will Casac take Parliament to court, for example?
Well, I think it's premature to speak of litigation and legal action. We wrote a letter to the Portfolio Committee last week, highlighting to them the fact that the public consultations that they're carrying out across the country, the Portfolio Committee has split itself up into two and is visiting all the provinces. But if people don't have access to what the issues are in this debate, they can't make any meaningful contributions to those public consultations. So we've highlighted to the committee that they are failing in their constitutional duty to ensure that there's adequate and proper public consultation. Okay. And that may well be right for legal challenge. I mean, it's premature to say whether the Casac or anybody else will take up that position. But we felt it was our responsibility to draw the attention of the Portfolio Committee that the way they are going about this is certainly not constitutionally compliant.
Okay, we'll try and get a response from them later on. Thank you very much, Lawson Naidoo from Casac there.